Good morning. Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Wednesday, August the 13th, 2025. And as has been the case in the last sort of couple of weeks, beautiful one day and then a bit miserable the next. It's been drizzling this morning or raining last night. It's a bit chilly, but hey, it is winter, isn't it? For a couple more weeks anyway. All right, so some news yesterday, of course, coming through. We didn't have a lot of details on Andrew Maloney. We probably still don't have a lot. I did see that he's on his social media that he's home, which is fantastic. The news, from what I can gather, was actually broken. Well, it all happened sort of over the weekend, sort of on Saturday, and didn't really sort of hit the news cycles until yesterday. So, and I did sort of going back through Andy's social media, did sort of see that he hadn't posted for quite a few days. Up to that point, he'd been quite active. Actually, you can see there I've got my team, probably can't see it there, my team Maloney jumper on there today. I'll always be part of the team with the boys. But yeah, just checking his social media, there wasn't a lot except for yesterday. He just said, well, he was home to see the kids, which is fantastic. I just could imagine having two little kids that he's got. I think they're only, I might be guessing here, sort of 4 and 2 or something like that. But to be away for, what was it, 6 or 7 weeks would have been extremely hard, let alone coming home empty-handed with nothing to show, not even the fight itself to show. So I'm sure they would have been happy to see Andy. But yeah, so disappointing for him and just everyone. I mean, I think he commented on a post yesterday saying he'd lost $20,000 by going over there and getting nothing in return. With the camp expenses and everything over there, he would have had his team. And yeah, $20,000 later and not even a fight. So it's just really bad form, I suppose, from the promoters over there, Xanfer, I think it is, to change the date so many times. I think Chelsea, his wife, might have commented as well on one of the posts on social media, because I think that might have been Oz Boxing, I think they had July 19th, August the 9th. Does that make, I think that's right, yep. And then the 16th, and then the change the date again, plus the venue. I think she also said July the 12th was initially the first date. So it's been changed 4 times for the date and twice for the venue. And we're not talking a venue on the other side of town. We're talking a venue 800 kilometres away. Yeah, not really good form from Xanfer. And you would think that they would probably struggle to get fighters to fight on the promotions going forward. So that was a really, really disappointing weekend, that I've said numerous times. Actually, before we move on, I didn't actually do the on this day. I've only got a couple today. The first one was on, in 1983. Milton the Iceman McCrory won the WBC welterweight title with a unanimous 12-round decision over Englishman, well, I think actually might have been from Wales, Colin Jones. That was in Las Vegas. He wasn't actually a bad fighter, Milton McCrory. He had the really anticipated or hotly anticipated fight with Donald the Cobra Curry in 1986, I think it was. Probably in comparison to a Crawford and Spence type of fight from a couple of years ago. Two really good young welterweights who are dominating with their respective belts, and then they match up, and probably like the Spence and Crawford fight, it was a total mismatch. In this particular fight, Donald Curry iced the Iceman in 2 rounds. So it was a blowout. And he really, I think he got another shot at the title against Mike McCallum a couple of years after that, but was stopped in that fight as well. So that was Milton the Iceman McCrory. His brother, of course, fought Jeff Fennick. His name was Steve McCrory. Unfortunately passed away a few years ago. He fought Jeff Fennick for the IBF bantamweight title in 1986. So that was on this day. And then one other thing is, I know it's not really significant, but Kimbo Slice, the late Kimbo Slice, in 2011 made his boxing debut with a 17-second knockout of James Wade. Now, you can sort of remember he was more of was he a backyard street fighter or something? I don't know. I actually met him once, strangely enough. I didn't know who he was, But one of the guys I was with, we were in a hotel, not a hotel lounge, an airport lounge. And I didn't know who he was. And the friend I was with said, oh, geez, that's Kimbo Slice. He was sort of into the UFC and MMA and all that backyard sort of stuff. And I didn't really know much about it. And he actually went over there and asked him for an autograph and was told, thanks, but no thanks. He said, I don't sign autographs, which was, I think, a little bit rich coming from a backyard fighter who hadn't actually done anything in the ring or any octagon or whatever it might have been. So, yeah, that was my one brush with Kimbo Slice. I remember actually in the same lounge about a year later. This is a little bit off topic. I actually sat next to the little fella, the mini-me from the Austin Powers movies. Is it Vernon? He's unfortunately passed away as well. Was it Vernon someone, I think his name was? And he was sitting next to me in the airport lounge, in that particular airport lounge. So I didn't actually say anything to him. I just sort of admired from afar, I suppose. But that was my little brush with fame in the airport lounge. But all right, let's get on to some more news. As I said, we've just talked about Andrew Maloney. Let's hope. The one thing actually I did hear, one thing about the fight though, is that even though RG Cortez is fighting another opponent this weekend, that Andrew Maloney will have the, because that's not an eliminator or anything like that, Andrew will have the ability to fight for either an eliminator or the belt in his next fight. So now it just comes down to, I suppose, resetting. After such a training camp, I can just imagine how he's feeling. But I'm hoping that this is a quick turnaround for him. They get on top of this really quick. And because you don't want to waste a camp. He hasn't fought this year at all. He fought last, was it November, December, whatever it was. That was the fight in Melbourne that he had to have to sort of maintain his ranking, and hasn't fought this year. But this was going to be the fight for him, and let's hope it does come through, a promoter comes through for him. Because wouldn't it be a good opportunity for someone like a No Limit to jump on board and bring a world champion to Australia? I mean, there's apparently all about Australian boxing. Andrew hasn't got a promoter at the moment. Big fight, potentially a world title fight. I'm not sure why someone like No Limit, who are always apparently looking for content for the monopoly on the TV deals and the pay-per-views and all that sort of stuff, why they wouldn't look at a fight like this with Andrew and signing him and Jason up, who have still got some big fights left in them. But anyway, I'm sure someone will hopefully pop up and he will get his opportunity later this year, and not too far away, as I said. The other thing I saw yesterday, still on the Aussie scene, I saw, I didn't see the interview. It was with Michael Zarafa. It was it's just a few snippets from his, I think he did a podcast with the Who the Fuck podcast, I think it's called. Now, that was strange in itself, because I know they actually had a run-in a few years back, or a couple of years back. I don't think Michael was happy with some of the things I was saying. I think might have been before the Isaac Hardman fight, and he got a bit upset with them and confronted them at a fight night. But obviously they've all kissed and made up, which is good. We don't want that sort of stuff happening outside the ring between podcasters and fighters and whoever. But he did say on there that he was asked about the Tim Tszyu fight. It's always probably the first question that he's going to get asked. And he was asked about the potential of still getting the Tim Tszyu fight and what it would mean to Australia and what it would bring and how big it would be. And again, I didn't watch the whole interview. I'll just state that. It was just more some snippets that I saw. But the one thing I did see is that he said that he could imagine the fight in somewhere like Marvel Stadium in Melbourne in front of 50,000 people and 200,000 pay-per-view buys and all this sort of stuff. Look, if I'm being honest, I've got to strongly, strongly disagree. I think if Michael fought Tim... look, it's all about timing, by the way. Let me just state that. It's about the timing. And I would think that if Tim and Michael fought, I would think within the next 12 months, let's just say, that fight is nowhere near getting 50,000 people to a Marvel Stadium and not 200,000 pay-per-view buys. I'm sure the pay-per-view buys would still be strong. But I'm not saying neither one of these fighters are worthy of that, by the way. But what I'm looking at is at the moment is that Tim Tszyu is just coming off the worst 18 months of his life, especially his career, obviously, where he's been knocked out twice, beaten in another fight, had the one win against a probably a journeyman type of fighter, and he's really, I hate to say it, but pretty much until proven otherwise on the scrap heap of world boxing. And I don't like to say that, but it's true. Michael Zarafa, on the other hand, is maybe on the cusp of another shot. I don't know, but he's from a year ago coming off that Lara loss. I know he's sort of redeemed himself a little bit to some extent, and now we're talking some other big fights for him, and that's fantastic. But if I'm looking at it as a whole, I'm looking at the fact that at the moment, as I said, Tim Tszyu is damaged goods, really damaged goods. 12 months ago or 18 months ago, riding high, absolute superstar of the sport. Michael Zarafa, on the other hand, has always been, well, I was going to say the B side, it's probably been more the C and D side. And there's nothing wrong with that. Most Tim Tszyu opponents are, but hasn't got a big following. We all know he's had his, I suppose his, I won't say run-ins, but the Australian public has had a bit of a love-hate relationship with him, so he's not really popular in that sense, which is why he doesn't headline his own pay-per-view cards, because he just won't sell. So he has to be on the undercard of a Nikita or one of those types of fights, Sam Goodman, Liam Wilson, whatever. Not that I think he's been on the undercard of them, but you know what I mean. They're the type of fights he has to get on, or the cards to get on to actually be part of a pay-per-view. If he had his own pay-per-view, it wouldn't sell. Now, I know in this case it wouldn't really matter because Tim Tszyu is the big name, and he would drag the promotion along and be the star power behind it, and Michael would probably play the villain, which is what he does pretty well. But I just think, as I said, within the next 12 months, that fight isn't a draw. I think he was comparing it also to like a Green Mundine situation. This is not Green and Mundine by any stretch. Because as I said, both, well, you've got Mundine and Green. Danny Green was obviously the hero, the superstar of Australian boxing, the much loved fighter, the all Aussie fighter, just resonated with so many people. He was the Aussie, as I said, the Aussie superstar, Aussie larrikin, whatever you might want to call him, and had a massive, almost an army of followers. He really did. Even to this day, so well loved is Danny. Then you had Anthony Mundine, who wasn't overly particularly liked by a large segment of Australian boxing fans, but he had a massive following as well, also an army of followers. So all this sort of gelled together, I suppose, or collided, where you had these two fighters in different types of followings, I suppose, and really dedicated fans. Let's just say that Danny had his really dedicated fans, and Anthony had his, and all that sort of created a sort of tsunami of support for both guys, and attention to the fight and media and everything else. And that's what sold the fight to get, well, I can't remember, was it 30 or 40,000 at an Aussie stadium? The pay-per-views, I don't know what they were, but they would have been absolutely massive. If this fight, and again, I don't want to be, come here, man, I don't want to be a pessimist or anything about it, but I'm just looking just for what it is. I would think that, come here, man. Morning. Come here. Oh, that dog there. I would think that, as I said, at the moment, Tim, while he has, well, I'm not sure, has he got an army of fans? He's probably got a hell of a lot of admirers in Australian boxing, but has he got that really rusted on, dedicated fan base? I'm not so sure. Everyone loves Tim, don't get me wrong, but does he have that fanatical fan base that Mundine and Green had? No, he doesn't. And Michael Zarafa even less so. Really struggles to draw at his fights. As I said before, with there's no way they will put him on a pay-per-view by himself. And yes, he would have a lot of people tuning in or turning up to watch him get beaten. You know, that's what they'll play on. But I just don't think the fight draws at this stage. I really don't. I just don't think, as much as people harp on about Michael Zarafa and everything else, are they going to actually pay to see him fight? I'm not so sure. Now, if I had to give some estimations about what I think the fight would draw at the moment, I would think 8, 9, 10,000 tops, I would think, at the fight. I just don't think it draws. It's a long way, I know, from 50,000, but to think that, Marvel Stadium, with how big it is, I'm only picking Marvel Stadium because that's the stadium that Michael sort of used. I'm thinking 8, 9, as I said, 10,000. That's all I could see at the fight. And pay-per-views, look, I don't really know what the ceiling is and what some of the biggest fights have drawn, but if Michael says they would expect 200,000, I mean, you've got to remember, excuse me, in the States with a population of 365 million people and a hell of a lot more boxing fans than they have here, if they sort of get over 500,000, it's a big event. If they get to 1 million, it's a massive event. So considering the population differences, relate that to the amount of fight fans that are out there, I would think it'd be best case maybe 100. I would think. Again, I'm not a pay-per-view expert here. I don't really have the numbers to compare it against, but if I'm going against what I see in America with 365 million people, where they think 500 is a massive event for a big fight over there, with our population here, I could not see 200. So let's just say it's even 100. Look, both guys will get a sizable payday out of it. I mean, if you look at the sums, if it was 100,000, they'd probably charge about $80 to watch the fight. Let's even say it's $90 a fight. What's that, $9 million? They have to cut it in half because main event takes half of that, so that's $4.5 million. The gate would probably be, if it was say 10,000 people, an average of, I don't know, $300 a ticket. What's that, 3? So they've got $7.5 million. You would think that No Limit would want to be paid. They'd probably want 1.5 of that, or actually the cost of the fight night might be 500,000. So with all the undercards and hotels, accommodation and all that sort of stuff. So we're down to 7 million. As I said, No Limit would want their share. So I would think they'd even want more than one. It might even be $2 million to put the fight on. Let's just say they only take $1 million. What are we back to, 6 million? Well, it's still a really good payday for both guys. You would think that out of that, Tim would probably get, if it's, what did I say, 6 million? I'm not sure it would generate that much. I'm just going to say, let's just say it is $6 million. Out of that, you would think that Tim would probably get 4 to 4.5. Michael would probably get 1.5 to 2. That's what I would think, which is still a fantastic payday for both guys. So I'm not going to try and downgrade that. I think, and both deserve to get paid that amount of money, but I'm just trying to say that there's no way the fight generates those types of numbers, just in my opinion. As I said, I just don't think the interest is there. And I know we're a dedicated bunch here as far as fight fans go, and you look at the fan sites and all the comments in the sections of all the news sites and all that sort of stuff. I think it's lukewarm. I think it's lukewarm. And look, 12 months ago, I think back 2021 might not have been as big either when they were supposed to fight. Probably the ideal time was probably at the end, or sort of towards mid 2023 to the end of 2023, when Tim was riding high. That was when he was beating Harrison and Mendoza and these types of guys. Michael was still around the mark. He hadn't fought Lara by that stage. That was probably the time. Now, not to say the fight might not happen down the track, and it might be big, because it might be in 12 months' time. Who knows? Tim might have come back and had 3 fights, and he's back as a big name again, and Michael might have had a couple of big scalps, and who knows. But as we stand here now, I just don't think that fight sells at all. I know I can understand Michael wants the fight ASAP, and I don't blame him. But geez, as I said, if this fight takes place in the next 12 months, I don't think it rates highly at all. The really dedicated fight fans out there, of course, they'd turn up, they'd watch the pay-per-views, but to get those massive numbers, you need to cross over. And what I mean by that, you need to cross over to all those, the footy fans and the soccer fans and all those neutral sort of fans who, it's not their main sport, but they sort of follow it and they'll go to a big event. They don't mind. They're the type of fans that they'll go to the event, all about the event. And that's what happened with George Kambosos when he had 40,000 people there. There's probably only 10,000 real fight fans there. The rest of them were just, it's a big event, let's go. And that's what Melbourne's great for. But this is what they did. And I just think, in my opinion at the moment, those those fans at the Rafter to fill those type of stadiums and buy the pay-per-views are looking at going, what, you mean that guy that just got knocked out? Yeah, I don't think so. And there's that big mouth guy. Yeah, no, I don't think so. This is the mentality of a lot of these type of fans that they're after, because if they're after just fight fans, if that's who they're aiming for, as I said, 8, 9, 10,000, that's all they'd get, and maybe 100,000 on pay-per-view. But anyway, I would hope to be proven wrong, but I'm just sort of going by past experiences, and just from what I see and read and from the fight fans out there. I just don't think this fight's got much momentum at the moment. And the Nikita Zarafa fight's got even less. I think that's almost got sort of flop written all over it, if I'm being honest. You could probably halve those numbers for a Nikita and Michael fight, which is probably why Nikita's not overly excited about it, and maybe Michael's not either. So I just think, again, I've said it numerous times, I just think that fight would be so forced that it would just come across that way and would really struggle to gain traction. Yes, there'd be a lot of dedicated fight fans out there that welcome it, but fight fans don't want Nikita and Michael. The casual fans anyway, they don't want Nikita and Michael. They want Tim and Michael, if at all. So just my 2 cents. Look, again, I hope I'm wrong. Even on those worst case sort of numbers that I just said, you could see that at least both boys would be paid good money, and so they should. So they should. But I think we've just got to be realistic, and I think it's great to have the dream of a 50,000 crowd and 200,000 pay-per-views and all that sort of stuff, but I'm sorry, I just don't see it happening. Again, just my 2 cents. All right, we'll finish up here. What else we got? I see that Sam Goodman has finally got a clip on the No Limit Facebook page. It was actually a post that they shared from the Main Event channel. So again, I know I've been over this, I've talked about it, I don't know what's happening there, but the fact they've actually shared the Main Event post, well, at least it shows they're doing something, I suppose. But you know, mixed in with all the videos, the countless videos of Michael and Nikita and Brock and everyone else, they've slipped in Sam Goodman's little clip in there. I did actually see in the Herald Sun, just again, a little bit cringe with them. I didn't actually read the article because I didn't bother by the headline, but it was, this English or this British lunatic kicked his last opponent and now he's gunning for Sam Goodman, or gunning for an Aussie. This is Nick Baldwin talking about it. Remember with the TJ Doherty fight when he did sort of flick his leg at him at the end of the round? Well, that's the headline they ran with. Peter Bedell, I hope that's not you. I didn't read the article because I went, you're kidding, aren't you? And I moved on. But that was it. That was the headline. This English lunatic kicked his last opponent and now he's gunning for an Aussie. We can do better than that, surely, with a headline there, whoever the editor of the paper is there. Yeah, really hoping Sam can get the win on the weekend. We'll talk more about that a little bit later, I suppose. And now, could we see Anthony Joshua and Andre Ward? You see, Andre Ward has said he'd like to fight Anthony Joshua after 8 years out the ring, and Anthony Joshua has replied and said, hey, let's go. Geez, what's probably, you talk about Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua being the last fight you'd expect. Well, I would have thought Andre Ward and Anthony Joshua would be even stranger, considering at least Jake Paul is active. Geez, what do you make of that? Andre Ward going up to heavyweight to fight Anthony Joshua. You know what? I think he would win. I do. I think Andre Ward, like talent-wise, is levels above what Anthony Joshua is. And even at 41 years of age and probably, geez, what would he be? Probably about 30 pounds over his fighting weight, or even more. He was 168 pounder, wasn't he? And then 175, was he? He was at 175 when he beat Kovalev. Geez, hey, stranger things have happened, but I'll tell you what, if I had a choice between the two, I know which fight I'm going for, and that's Andre Ward and Joshua over Jake Paul. But yeah, it was strange to see Andre Ward actually bring it up, and Anthony Joshua replies. So maybe gives Eddie Hearn someone else to think about as far as an opponent for Anthony Joshua goes, because they've been talking about it. Is it Tony Yorker, the Olympic gold medalist, who I've never really heard of before? He is the other one they're talking about apart from Jake Paul. And Pacquiao Barrios 2 looks like it could happen in December at the MGM Grand. So, you know, as unusual that it was that Manny managed to get a draw over Mario Barrios, he probably does deserve to be the #1 challenger now, and he'll get his shot in December at the venue in which he has, as a fighter, fought the most fights out of any fighter in history, the MGM Grand. So we will see that, as I said, in December. And just a little bit of a funny note, well, it's not really funny if you're Dillian White, is it? You see the grand arrivals over in Riyadh, and the announcer called him, his nickname is the Body Snatcher. The announcer called him the Baby Snatcher. Not cool for that announcer. Now, I don't know whether he got mixed up with, thought he was maybe Big Baby and the Body Snatcher and all of that sort of mixed in. Dillian White said he thought he did it deliberately just to unsettle him. It is a Queensberry promotion, so I thought they're trying to unsettle Dillian White, but yeah, to be called the Baby Snatcher, not cool by that announcer at all, and I can understand Dillian White not being too happy. They did actually talk about it afterwards, Dillian White was getting interviewed by somebody and they brought the announcer in, and I think they all sort of made peace. But yeah, not a great mistake to make when introducing someone like that. So anyway, guys, that's going to do it for today. Hope you have a great Wednesday, and we'll catch you tomorrow.